Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com or, of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by cinematographer Callan Green, whose work includes The Enforcer, Guilt, and more recently, Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman, just to name a few. Welcome to the show, Callan.
G'day, how are you?
Pretty good, thanks. I guess my first question is, how did you get involved with The Gentleman?
Well, I was driving home from set, and my agent sent me a message saying, "Would you like to read this script? I think it's going to be really, really good." I was like, "Oh man, that sounds amazing!" So I got home, had a read, and I was like, "This is the best thing I've ever read. This is totally like wicked." So yeah, I just went from there, and then I had an interview with Aaron Creevy, the director, and it went from there.
So then, when you were working with the director, uh, how did you guys get work together or figure out the sort of style and the look of the show?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, we already had a base kind of platform to work from that Guy and Ed Wild, the Block One DP, had already created.
Hmm.
Um, and so we were lucky enough to be able to watch an early cut of episode one, and so we were like, well, this is top shelf. This is like a really high bar to work from, but this is going to be awesome, you know.
Yeah.
So we just got together. We Aaron's really good at like coming up with like shot lists of what he wants to get out emotionally from from each scene. I would then go away and I instead of sort of coming up with movie references, I tend to work with stills. So
Hmm.
I'd use like platforms like Shot Deck and stuff like that, and I like to create like a PowerPoint presentation for each scene if I can, or each scene that's important.
Hmm.
So we'd go through that. Another thing that we did that was that Aaron was really cool with, and I absolutely loved, is he comes up with a lot of music. So we had a Spotify playlist that we would that would listen to that would have like references to each different scene, and I found that was a really good way of sort of getting you both on the same page, both emotionally and visually, really.
It's interesting that you talked about things like shot deck because now we have
Mm,
this sort of proliferation of AI sort of moving in fast.
yeah.
Do you think in the future you'll just be using AI to like create the look to a certain
Yeah,
degree, or
yeah.
will you sort of stay away from it?
Funnily enough, there was a scene with Sticky Pete. I think it's episode 8, where it was just so out there that I couldn't find any references that were going to work. So I did actually chuck it into an AI, chucked in like Russian mafia, cheesy bar, crazy fluoro lighting, and and I also took some stills from the recce, and it was really weird. It did come up with some really cool ideas. Some of it was completely wrong, but
Yeah.
it was actually useful. It was the first time I'd done it, and I would do it again if I got stuck.
I've been a camera person for 30 years and I fell in love with cinema. I heard there was free film school in France and I wanted to get into the French film school. I really didn't know anything at the time, but I knew at least how to take pictures. So I said, I'll try for the image department. And then when I miraculously got into the French film school, I fell in love with working with the camera. You're following what's going to be in the movie. So that immediacy that the camera allows is what I loved from the beginning. I'm Kirsten Johnson, and this is my course about documentary cinematography.
Interesting. It's fun to play with right now. It'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, I
it's
know,
just
right? Yeah,
I think it was what was that? Sora or whatever they just released the videos and it looks
yeah.
like.
Oh, it's
And I
mental,
think
eh? Yeah,
and I was like, that's been a year of development. And
yeah.
within another year, who knows what it's gonna look like.
Oh man, what's it going to be like in 10 years? It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's gonna be crazy.
Well,
Well
yeah.
then how did the tone of the show help guide you in your looks?
Well, I suppose I mean Guy has a kind of a genre of his own, really, doesn't he? And so we were almost allowed to do anything as long as it worked emotionally for the scene.
Hmm.
So we would we'd go through the script, and we'd kind of, what we'd do is we'd read the script, and then Aaron especially would look between the lines and see like, how far can we push this, with a little bit of a nod to Guy's older stuff as well. But we didn't want to take it too far. But like, say for instance, in the boxing scene in episode 6, when they're at Susie Glass's office, or boxing ring, the script pretty much just said, they're watching boxing, they're really excited, but we chucked in 1,000 frames a second on the Phantom, and then we pulled away from the guy hitting the ground, and then pushed around and pushed into Susie and Eddie watching. It was kind of, it just allowed us to get away with a lot of stuff that I think you possibly couldn't in other shows.
Well, you talked about the boxing ring. I'm wondering how you sort of approached lighting this scene, because it's really interesting how it looks. So how did you guys sort of approach it?
I assume you're talking about the bigger boxing ring, the bigger match
sorry.
that happens. No, that's cool. I mean, that was huge. That was a big one, because we pretty much we chose a shell of a location that they use anything from weddings to big functions. The main thing about this building is it has a massive big window that overlooks Canary Wharf, and it has the sun setting in the background if it's a sunny day. So that's why we chose that place. But then we also had to turn it into something that was going to suit a boxing ring. So we had to put in all our own rigging, all our own lights. I think it was insane amount of lighting that we put in there. Possibly went over the top, but it was quite enjoyable. And one thing that I wanted to do, what we wanted to do is get the camera right in there, so you felt like you're really amongst it. I think we shot on like a 21mm, and my fight operator for that was Alex Bender, and he was all over the place, and he was because they were all over the place and moving around all the time, it's really tricky to keep the lighting in a position that I feel looks good. Because for me, boxing especially looks best when it's backlit or side lit. You can really feel the punches, you can feel the sweat coming off their faces. So what we did is I asked the board operator, Charlie Stallard, if he could create a program where we'd be able to rotate the lighting in the gantry to suit where the camera was in relation to the fighter. I asked him to do that on the last day of the pre-light, which was a big call, and you should have seen his face when I asked him. The gaffer wasn't too sure if we'd be able to do it, but he was definitely keen to give it a go. And they spent, I think, probably all night getting that sorted. They had to create all kinds of different programs in Photoshop, and it was insane, but it did work. So that we were allowed to do, I think, 4 rotations in one direction, and then they'd have to undo it. But it definitely worked for what we wanted to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so, like, you talked about the backlighting, and that was one of the sort of the way it sort of sit. It's backlit, but they're not silhouetted or anything. You can still see.
No. Yeah, so what we would have would be 100% backlight, and then it would slowly drift off, and then probably be about 10 or 20% on this side. So that would rotate rather than just hard backlight and nothing. So if you watch it, you can actually see it getting brighter as the camera moves around a little bit.
I didn't see that, so
no. Hopefully you're not looking at that.
Yeah. Well, so like, are you a fan of boxing? Because you said when you see boxing, or did you go to movies and sort of look at the way it was?
Oh, there's like, Creed and Rocky and all of that. And I watch a bit of boxing, but I wouldn't say that I'm like definitely deep into boxing, but I watch a little bit.
Well, and the other scene that sort of stuck out to me in your episodes was the Caravan of Mirrors, where it's all reflective surfaces.
Oh my God!
How did you shoot that without being caught in the?
Yeah, it was straight. It was a pretty harsh start. That was, I think, the first night that we shot in with the scene between Lawrence and Theo. Something about these caravans that they're really keen on is mirrors everywhere, and also everything's covered in plastic as well. So then you've got all kinds of reflective surfaces. To be honest, it was really, really tricky. I tried to light it with cracks and from outside, but and then just where do you put the camera? Where do you put the camera operator? The focus pullers outside. We couldn't really put two cameras in there. It was just really, really tricky, especially to try and keep it lit well as well. But I think we got there.
So would you say that was one of your tougher scenes to light?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it was it's always the first one up too. It was literally like night one or night two. So yeah, it was full on.
Now, one of the things I like to ask cinematographers, um, like a lot of them, when I talk to them, they're always looking and sort of building up that lookbook or building up that knowledge base of lighting and
Mm,
photography and painting and what have you. Is there a
mm.
particular artist or a particular photographer that you sort of go to for inspiration?
To be honest, not so much. It's just been a work of osmosis, really. Because I didn't focus pull, I went from second AC to DP.
Mhm.
I didn't really have much time around the camera where I wasn't really busy. So the lighting thing for me has been probably the slower learning curve from my progression. But other than just coming up with images and watching films and just chatting about stuff, that's pretty much what I do. I don't really collate stuff, if you know what I mean.
So one of the things I'm interested in also is, you know, back if we were shooting in the 90s, you know, the way we did color correction back then was very simple in
Yeah,
comparison to what we're
yeah,
doing now.
like one
So
window.
what is your relationship with your colorist and how did you guys work together on this project to get your looks?
Yeah, yeah. So his name is Matthew Toilette, I think. He works at Company 8. And he's absolutely brilliant. I mean, as I said before, there was already a base look that was already set.
Mhm.
But so we went in there on day one. We had 3 days to grade each episode, just pretty quick. You need to get through each episode, pretty much half of it on day one, finish it on day two. Day three, you need to like tidy it up real quick. The relationship is I would see a cut. I would send through notes based on the time codes.
Mhm.
um, Send them to him. He would have a look through it. So when we get in there, we're at least on the same page of what needs to be done. But to be honest, I mean, the better you can do it in camera, the less you're going to have to do it in the grade, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, he's just a lovely guy, and we just sit there and chat and grade away.
Did you guys have any LUTs on set with the DMT or the DIT?
Yeah, we did. We had one. Ed Wild created that. It was pretty chunky. It kind of freaked me out when I first saw it. It
Oh,
was
really?
probably a stop and a half under, uh, pretty contrasty and reasonably colorful. I mean, it looked great, but like if you'd been working on a show or a program or a commercial that was quite low con, and then you went
Mhm.
on to that, you'd absolutely freak out. And it definitely took me a few days to get used to that one. Just you need to pump quite a lot of light in to satisfy the LUT.
Now, one of the questions, and this is sort of an odd question, it might be a really simple one to answer, so I apologize.
Okay,
But
let's go.
when you're at, I think they call it the farm where they grow all the pot in those,
Yeah,
and those grow lights have like they cut out specific um, frequencies so that it's a specific color for that the plants
yeah,
for. So did
yeah.
that mess with your guys' lighting in any way, or was
It,
it?
it, it, it was pretty tricky because I mean, they're not specific glow lights. I think they were aquabattens, but we made them a certain color
Yeah.
to look like that, right? Um, it was tricky because on faces they would look really harsh and really really saturated. So it was a tricky way. It was hard to get the balance right where people didn't look like a Smurf or a blueberry or really really sunburnt. But yeah, you just had to mix it up a bit and soften it off a bit and tone it down a bit. Yeah.
So now that you've done this project, what do you like? Is there a particular genre or particular style of film or TV show that you'd want to tackle?
Mate, to be honest, I'm just loving shooting TV and film. I mean, I haven't been doing it too long. I was in commercials and music videos before this.
Yeah,
Well, not before this, but like 4 years ago. My favorite film is Amelie or Big Lebowski,
yeah,
Never Ending Story. Any of those, anything like that is right up my alley. But to be honest, I'm kind of just happy to be shooting, to be honest.
yeah. Well, I have one last question for you then. What is your
Yeah.
favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
Oh, man. Well, my wife and I got through lockdown watching Below Deck.
Oh
I
yeah.
wonder if that comes up a lot. Or also, what is it? Love at First Sight, the Australian
Oh
one.
yeah. Yeah.
God, that was super bitchy, wasn't it? But then I found out that it's actually scripted, so then I went off that a
Oh
little bit.
really? I thought,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, well, maybe I'm not supposed to say that.
Is that the same as Love is Blind on
No,
Netflix?
I think that's the one where they're not allowed to see each other at all,
Yeah.
right? Or is that
Yeah.
Naked Attraction? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. We'll never know. Well, thank
Yeah,
you so
man.
much for letting me interview you today.
Hey, no worries. Nice to meet you, mate.
Yeah, great to meet you. And that's it for
Cool.
our show this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com, of course, on Instagram at filmmaker_you. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.